Episode 22, where it is the segment only, nay small talk, apart from this first bit. So we've got a segment-heavy episode today, which is what we love. But I recently put a listing on Facebook where I wanted to sell some of my wrestling figures just to kind of get them out the road. They're just sitting about in boxes and stuff.
Right.
I thought, let's try and get these shipped off somewhere anyway. And no one responded to the ad, so I was like, all right, well, that's the end of that then. And then randomly out of nowhere, someone messaged me like out of the blue saying, "Is this Sting TNA figure still available?" And I said, "Yes, it is actually. No one bought it, so yes, it's still available. Would you like it?" And they said, "Yes, please." And we organised prices and that sort of thing. He sent me the money on PayPal. I sent the figure away the next day, first class, so he should be getting it tomorrow or the following day. And I wanted to make sure that he knew that I sent it in good time, so I sent him a message and I said, "Hi, thanks again for buying this off me. I've sent it away today first class. Let me know when it gets there. Thanks very much for your service again. By the way, I have a wee wrestling podcast. I don't know if you want to listen to it." I said,
always a hustler. Always a hustler.
Always need a hustle, you know?
Yeah.
And the first thing he said was, "Cool, I'll check it out. Nice artwork, by the way." So there you go.
Oh, nice one, Al. So, folks, if you don't know, our artwork is done by the marvelous Jamie Sweeney, who has a whole Instagram full of the different things that he's done with his art. He's awesome. So go check it out. It's been very good. He's given me a hairline that I can only dream for nowadays.
Yep.
But yeah, it's what you see on your device as you listen to our dulcet tones. That's awesome.
Yes. At the end of last week's episode, we debuted a segment called Random Wrestler Recollection. Are you ready for number 2?
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it.
For those who missed last week, we'll reach into this tub of random names of wrestlers that neither Glenn or I have seen before. Whatever name comes out, we have to give our immediate reaction, any random memories of this wrestler, whether it be male, female, manager, commentator, whatever, without even thinking about it. Are you ready for number 2? It is MVP.
MVP. Right. So I always wondered. Right. So I've seen the MVP wrestle once, I think, which was when I went to a SmackDown show live. Yeah, in 2008. And it was I've talked about it before. The main event was MVP, Mark Henry, and Edge versus Matt Hardy, Batista, and the Undertaker. Awesome kind of spot fest kind of.
Yeah.
House show main event, kind of classic. And I know you've got a couple of cool stories about seeing MVP live, and I'm thinking of your Impact story. But for me, the one thing that always bothered me is that guy back in his prime, in his first run in WWE, was always in great shape. And I never got why he had to wear that bodysuit in the ring. And I heard that he had a tattoo that apparently they didn't want to show.
Really?
But do you ever think that his ring gear was weird? Because it was so I suppose it was distinctive at the same time.
Yeah, I never thought it was weird. I didn't think anything of it really. I just kind of thought, oh, that's MVP's gear. But I remember when he debuted, I didn't like him at all, obviously, because I was like perfect age for like the heels. You know, I hated all the heels and loved all the baby faces and stuff. But I remember loving his Inferno match with Kane at Armageddon 06.
Oh god!
Really, only because of the finish, and I pure respected MVP even as a young guy for that finish, because that kind of been. I know obviously there's ways to do it where you're not actually going to get burned, but that kind of been fun to do. You know, he gets
fire still
he gets choked, and it's like he's got him on the steel steps, and he kind of like ushers him back, so like his back is lit up from like his arse to like his back of his neck, just is on fire. That's like, imagine preparing for that, you know. So I always respected him, and I used to love the wrestling figure of MVP. Again, maybe it's because of the gear, but it really stood out when you were, if it was in your box or you're playing with or whatever, you know, it would always stand out, and I would always make him in my wrestling promotion anyway. I'd always have MVP, whether I liked him or not. But I liked MVP, and I like him now a lot more.
We mentioned this last week. Yeah, he is brilliant right now. It's nice to think that started off with what was probably just supposed to be a one-night deal, his Royal Rumble return, which was really fun. Like, we all popped for it, you know, because we hadn't seen him in 10 years in the WWE, apart from the Raw one of the Raw 25 he showed up.
That's right, yeah.
But I didn't think we'd ever see him wrestle again in the ring. And then when he had a couple of more appearances, I thought, okay, he's mainly a backstage guy. He's done wrestling. But I love what he's doing with this new faction. I love the way he's being used. And I feel like they're using him just enough. They're not putting him in the ring all the time, but they're doing it, regularly enough that it feels special when he does wrestle, because he's a legend now. He is.
Yeah. I'm like, Tropicana, I got the juice.
The juice.
Call back. Other wee random MVP stories. When he was released in 2011 or whenever it was, he started a YouTube show called MVP or VIP Sessions or something.
Right.
And I used to watch it on my phone at night, and it was so peaceful. I don't know what it was. He used to sit at his desk, and there was no editing. There was nothing whatsoever. It was just him answering fan questions. And I learned more about the guy, and I really respected him even more after that. So that was really personal of him. And then I was in attendance at his TNA debut in Glasgow in 2014,
nice.
The first ever wrestling show at the Hydro, which is the big arena in Glasgow, or Edinburgh if you watch the Eurovision film on Netflix. Play ya ding dong. But I was sitting in that crowd. I was sitting in that crowd waiting for this to be announced. It was like there's a new investor coming to TNA, a new general manager, like authority figure, going to be here to overthrow Dixie Carter. And no one knew who it was going to be. And TNA at this point had a bit of a reputation for building up these big returns and debuts, and it being quite underwhelming. I remember there was one for months and months called August 1 Warning. And there was this big special live episode of Impact that was going to air on the 1st of August. And it was about the Main Event Mafia and all these other guys that were about to have this aces and eights. And they were going to have this big showdown. And whoever was going to be revealed on August 1 was going to be like the special enforcer of this big war.
Yeah.
And everyone was guessing who it was going to be. It was going to be RVD. It was going to be all these people from years ago. It was going to be Abyss and all this stuff. And it ended up being Tito Ortiz, the UFC fighter who retired from MMA in 2010 or something. And everyone was just like, oh, all right then. And like that became like a meme. Like, and I in fact just like in the 1st of August, just recently in 2020, I saw these pictures online. People saying August 1 warning, happy August 1st and stuff. It's just a picture of Tito Ortiz. So then when you thought like they're going to do this big review or a big debut, I mean, I was like, oh, it's probably going to be nothing special. And then obviously in his WWE song that we love so much about Tropicana and stuff, it has like a sort of clock at the start. I don't know why, but there's a clock at the start of the theme song. And before he came out in TNA, he had like written his own song, and his theme song was like a rap done by him. But before it kicks in, it's like a clock. And because of the clock, I knew it was MVP. And it's just so funny, like the Austin glass break or the Bret Hart guitar riff or something. It's like this wee thing at the start. You just know it's who it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
And this clock ticking just made me think it was MVP. And I remember sitting in, like, I was like the front row of this kind of section of the tiered seating at the Hydro, and I remember shouting out loud, "It's MVP!" And everybody was like around me, like, "Really? How do you know that already?" And it ended up being MVP. He was like the new GM. So there's a random MVP story from a live show.
Nice one. Speaking of wrestlers whose names are like initials, did I tell you that like 2 weeks ago when I'd been to on a Friday night, I went to meet a couple of friends at a bar. On the way home, I was feeling quite, pleasantly cheerful from the evening I'd had. And I DM'd DDP on Twitter.
Why?
Right, so I've DM'd him before and he's replied to me. But that was like 3 years ago. And so I wrote this like in the evening. I wrote, and remember, I'd been to the pub. DDP... You're a legend. Thank you for doing what you do, sir, and have an amazing weekend. Glenn, smiley face. 3 days later, he replied with 3 emojis. Okay.
Nice.
He replied with the fist emoji, as in like a punching because I'm a wrestler.
Yeah,
the explosion emoji for bang. And
nice.
The diamond emoji for, Diamond Dallas Page. I thought that was quite lovely, Thank you for that, DDP.
He probably gets these requests all the time, and he probably just wants to stick in with his fans. I like DDP. That's a good guy right there.
Yeah, I'll tell that story one day down the line about. I very briefly met DDP 2 or 3 years ago. Great guy, really good guy.
Just like the diamond cutter, you never saw it coming.
Now, why didn't they use that for the SummerSlam promotion? You never saw it coming.
I know. It's just his face talking Sarah. Yeah.
We're so early on in this podcast, I already need to call you for a toilet break because I've drank my water very quickly.
God,
so
13 minutes. 13 minutes. And it's
just
time for a pee.
Here we go. Toilet break.
Just another victim.
Sorry, man. Right, I'll be really quick. Okay.
Toilet break.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for joining us in the toilet break. It was truly, truly a delight. I was just speaking about MVP debuting in Impact. Didn't you have some comments about Impact recently you wanted to talk about that we missed out last week?
Yeah, like, so it's not even like a huge analysis of their product or anything, but like since Slammiversary, they've had a bit of a kind of extra eyes on them because they've had like the Good Brothers and Brian Myers and a lot of big names coming up, and I kind of just think like they got a lot of attention as well because they let Tessa Blanchard go. The whole what would they do about the world title scene was intriguing, and I'm just happy that they're kind of seen positively again, because it does feel, we have mentioned this before, it does feel like TNA for the last, God, I would say 6 or 7 years has been seen, I would say, I think 5 or 6 years or so has been seen just as a bit of a joke, and it's always been this kind of thing of when are they going to die, which is a shame because they've always had a good roster, and that's even post their glory days. Like, they've always had good wrestlers. There's never been a question of that. And now, sorry, this tonic water is repeating on me. Now that we're at this stage now with pandemic wrestling, right, where WWE has the Thunderdome, and it feels much more like the original product. It's not, but it feels closer to it, and it's refreshing, right? AEW is doing the fans at that venue that they have, and they've got well, they do have some fans now actually, but
10%,
it's mainly the roster, but they've started to be able to sell tickets for things, but they've always felt quite authentic. I think they did the best out of this in terms of
I agree.
their presentation. They didn't have to plug in like fake crowd noise. They always felt like they had a good bit of atmosphere. I was almost not aware of the fact that they were missing fans at Double or Nothing, for example.
100%, yeah.
And then you get to Impact, and you were talking about this a few weeks ago, and Impact have just decided not to try and replicate anything, and that might be a budget decision, or it might just be a more old school Impact decision to differentiate themselves from the other products. So Impact are totally and utterly, no crowd, no noise. They still have a really cool lighting rig. They have a cool presentation. And I have to say, like, as much as I'm going to be glad to see fans at Impact shows again, I kind of like it. There's something about it that is raw. It's gritty. It's visceral. And not to be confused with viscera.
All raw.
Yeah. There's something that I just really liked about it. And it was a match with Brian Myers, and actually I've forgotten who he was wrestling.
Was it Eddie Edwards? Was it with the title?
No, maybe it was the Eddie Edwards match, actually. But it was great to see somebody like Brian Myers still doing great work. Being the great wrestler that he is. I'm a huge Brian Myers fan.
And just seems to be a really down-to-earth guy.
I found their presentation refreshing. The wrestling is consistently good, and that's what's most important, is that they have good wrestling.
It's very good, actually.
If I can be shown like a clip of a match on YouTube and want to see more, then they're doing their job. And if they're able to do that in these times, then I'm like, bravo. I'm just so happy that Impact is we can look at Impact in that positive way again, because that company is a Hall of Fame wrestling company, and it deserves to be looked at positively,
Yeah, obviously we spoke about the somewhat positives of lockdown, where these things have happened, and it's kind of like a happy accident. So you've been like, oh, that's actually quite cool. And I wonder if it's because it's different, I wonder when we have fans back at Impact, you'll go like, oh, it's so much better with fans. You know what I mean? But because this is where we are now, you're thinking, oh, that's actually quite cool. It's the same with Raw Underground, right? At first, I was like, what? Why? It's like a fake brawl for all. It's not going to work, you know what I mean? And now I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Like, I'm actually interested. Like, I don't care about the storylines and stuff, but it's just the fact that it's so ridiculously different to what you were seeing in the actual in-ring part of Raw. It was actually nice to see it looking totally different, So I'm so used to seeing Raw and SmackDown and Dynamite and that sort of thing looking the way it looks. So it's actually nice watching Impact because it just looks so different,
Yeah.
I actually watched a New Japan pay-per-view this week, the first big New Japan pay-per-view since, I don't know, fucking January or something. I can't even remember, but it was called Summer Struggle, and it was at a Jingu Stadium, I think it's called, and it's like a big stadium. Like I don't know if they've run it before, but it's a huge open air stadium, and they've got fans in, man. And my God, the actual respect and discipline of the rules was incredible. Like everybody was sitting 6 feet apart. It looked like all the rows were blocked off. Then you had a selection of 3 people in a row. Everybody wearing a mask, and I mean everybody I saw in the crowd was wearing a mask. No one's screaming and shouting. Everyone's just clapping because they can't really get too much involved. It just looked like good effort. Do you know what I mean? And if that can happen, and it's obviously they're much more disciplined over there than they are here or in America. But honest to God, it just looked like a normal show, which was nice to see some normality, you know. So anyway, good thing that Impact is doing well, and I'm happy that, as you say, that it's getting a bit of buzz and a bit of positivity because it totally deserves it, especially with all the new signings and stuff. And I think Eddie Edwards is low-key one of the best wrestlers in the world, and no one really talks about it because he's an Impact. So there you go.
Yeah.
I would love you right now to recommend me a match of the week.
Excellent. Cue jingle.
Wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations. Match of the week.
Oh yeah. So, this is a match I've been wanting to recommend for a few weeks, and there's never been a time that felt right. And I'll tell you the match now, and then I'll explain to you why it feels right. You'll know straight away, really, when I tell you. For the first time on this show, I'm recommending a WCW match.
Ooh.
And it's a match that I know you know, because I know that you first discovered this match in the same way I did.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
It's what am I going to say, Chris?
Eddie and Ray, Halloween Havoc, 97.
Yeah, you got it. Eddie and Ray, Halloween Havoc, 1997. And how did I first see this match, Chris?
Booyaka Booyaka Ray 619 DVD back in 2003, yo.
I discovered this match at the age of 12 when I was it was the year 2003, and I got the Rey Mysterio 619 DVD. And what was cool was that this was one of the first DVDs that WWE put out, where they were really starting to put a lot of WCW content in, because they'd acquired the video library from WCW
for about $2 million.
I know, right? So, this match is awesome, and the funny thing is, I've never gone back to watch Nitro, so I don't really know much about the build up to this match, really, you know. But I love this match for many reasons, and last week we mentioned WrestleMania 21 and how Eddie and Ray opened the show, and that is a great match. But I don't think they ever had a better match than their Halloween Havoc match, and that might be a controversial opinion. Some might disagree and point to their WWE stuff, which is good. But I think from a technical wrestling point of view, this was a great match. Those more younger fans who don't know this match will hopefully remember Seth Rollins' Summerslam gear. So from a few weeks ago, Seth Rollins wrestled Dominic Mysterio, and his purple gear is taken from Rey Mysterio's gear from this match. It's an iconic costume, and I'm pretty sure WWE have put out an action figure with this gear now, haven't they? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it's the full bodysuit, so the mask is actually part of the suit. So throughout the match, Eddie is ripping out the mask, and it's the first time you get a really good look at what Ray's face might look like. This is before he'd ever been unmasked, and it's great. And one of the most memorable spots is that they do this sort of thing where they're kind of gripping each other's hands, and then Ray kind of jumps up the ropes, and then Eddie's still on the ground, and then Ray, whilst holding Eddie's two hands in his hands, jumps up to the top ropes and springs backwards into a moonsault, and then turns it into a DDT, and he does it so seamlessly and so it makes it look like it's the easiest thing, like getting out of bed in the morning. Like, it makes it look so straightforward, and it's beautiful. And some point somewhere, maybe on that DVD or maybe in one of the books, maybe in Eddie's book, I've heard or read somewhere that they would try to do that again in subsequent matches, either in house shows or on other broadcasts, but they could never get it to work quite like it did at Halloween Havoc 97. And as far as I'm aware, the readers of WCW magazine voted that match of the year in 1997, and I believe Ray makes a point of telling you that in the 619 DVD. And for me, as a 12-year-old Glenn, falling in love with this idea of a luchador, because I'd never seen a luchador before Rey Mysterio, going back on that DVD to see his history in like AAA and then WCW and ECW, and to be able to watch this match with Eddie Guerrero, another guy who I'd been aware of at this point from his WWF and WWE days, it was awesome, and it mesmerized me, this match, and it just kind of like consolidated me as a Rey Mysterio fan. And so it's kind of cool to see him do this stuff now with Dominic, where you know Eddie's kind of always at the heart of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I really want to watch this DVD now you're talking about it, and it's going to be such a kick in the nostalgia watching this, isn't it? Just like the way the DVD's made, like the cuts between the matches and then back to his history and that sort of thing. Yeah. But what I loved about this when I was especially younger was when they showed Dominic's room and he had all the wrestling figures. I used to think that was the coolest thing ever, and now it's absolutely wild that Seth Rollins is wearing Rey Mysterio's gear from '97, the year I was born, wrestling Dominic from that DVD at SummerSlam. What on earth is life? Do you know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And my God, shout out to Dominic. What a great job he did, you know?
Yeah, this is the thing. A lot of people raised their eyebrows at Dominic's involvement from the word go. But he was always going to have a hard time. And, you know, I'm going to draw a comparison now to something that might seem unusual, but I watched an interview, like a red carpet interview from a few months ago with Christian Bale, where somebody asked him about Robert Pattinson being cast as Batman, right? And the interviewer said, what do you make of this casting decision? And what advice would you give to Robert Pattinson? And Christian Bale just says, do you know what? Just own it and ignore what everyone says. Because when Chris Nolan cast Heath Ledger as the Joker, everyone thought, oh, this rom-com guy, like what a ridiculous choice for the Joker. And then they blew
10 things I hate about you and all that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And so Christian Bale makes the point, like, just own it, do your own thing, and don't listen to the critics. And I think Dominic, so first of all, I think Robert Pattinson's going to make an awesome Batman. But second of all, I think Dominic needs to have this attitude, because he's always going to be in his father's shadow to an extent. But do you know who else was told that? Dwayne Johnson. Do you know what I mean? He was told he would be in his father's shadow, you know? Because if you think about it, you know, Rocky Johnson was the first African-American WWF Tag Team Champion. He had had an extremely successful career. He's a bona fide Hall of Famer. And so Rocky Maivia was taking half of his dad's name and half of his grandfather's name, and he made a success. And I'm not saying Dominic Mysterio is going to be the next The Rock, but I'm not going to tell you that he's not going to be either. He's a young man.
Mysterio, yeah.
He's in his early 20s. There's no way that he's going to be Rey Mysterio Jr. because he's not going to be a carbon copy of his dad, because he's not got the same body type or the same agility. But he can be something special in this industry, and I think for him to do that, his first match on SummerSlam with Seth Rollins, to perform in that manner. And I'm sure a lot of it, you know, was Seth Rollins keeping things in place as well. And I'm sure they knew what they were going to do going into it. But I was so impressed. It looked totally legit, you know. And
you're clearly having some issues with your forgetfulness there, because you're talking as if Rey Mysterio is actually Dominic's dad. You remember that it's actually Eddie Guerrero that's his dad. And I was thinking that as well. I was like, Dominic's really tall. You know what I mean? Like, Rey's not tall. Yeah. How is that? And I was like, it must be a Guerrero. So
Guerreros aren't tall either.
No, the 7 foot tall Eddie Guerrero. Right. So I love, back to Halloween Havoc 97. I love that match. But it's because it's not one I grew up watching that everyone rants and raves about it.
Yeah,
It's arguably the best match in WCW history, you know. But I've never saw that because it was just an extra on the Ray DVD. When you watch it now, you're thinking, this is incredible. And now the fact we've seen everything, you know, nothing surprises us anymore. But still, when he does that backflip DDT thing, or he goes over the top rope and catches him in the Hurricanrana and things like that, even still, you go, oh my God, you know, and if that's still making you kind of pop and think, that's a match that stands the test of time. And as a template for the match you will see on an NXT show, or an AEW show, or a New Japan show in 2020, you know, so that's why they two should be considered two of the greatest ever for matches like that, you know, so. Huge props for that recommendation, my friend.
Woo.
I always make this joke. I'm so thankful for that match, but it's true because it's time for this segment now.
What I'm thankful for in wrestling this week.
Oh yeah.
So it's really hard to, Glenn will agree here, it's really hard to kind of round down what you're thankful for sometimes, because there's so many big things that you want to talk about for ages, but you think that they should have their own episodes. And I agree. Things like wrestling figures or wrestling DVDs and all that, I think about all the time, but we have to do them as their own episodes. So I just so happened to be watching an episode of Raw this week on a wee attitude there, a watch along I'm doing. And it was from February 13th, 1999. Okay. And it was from the Sky Dome in Toronto. Wow. And it is the largest Raw crowd to date in 1980. I don't know if they've broken it since, but I know that they did the Georgia Dome in 2000. They may have broken it then. But up until this point, this was the largest crowd for Raw. Sold out at the Sky Dome. 43,000 people for Raw.
Wow.
I say sold out. They didn't even open up the top tier like they did for WrestleMania 18. But 43,000 seats were available and 43,000 were taken. So the signature starts, the do thing starts. If you missed that there, that was do. It starts at the top of the show, and then the intro plays, which was beautifully read a couple of weeks ago, by Glenn, and the pyro goes off and stuff like that. And I miss the days where it used to do that, where the pyro would go off and the lights would remain off, and then all of a sudden the lights would flash on and everybody would go mental.
Yeah,
and you literally cannot see the crowd for what I'm thankful for this week, and that is wrestling signs.
Good one.
It is. I've literally written here in my notes, absolutely ridiculous. Every single person in the first tier or camera side has brought a sign. It is ridiculous, and some of them are hilarious, some of them are bog standard, some of them are totally inappropriate. But the creativity. You know what I mean? Who was the first person, like Hogan or something? Do you know what I mean? Who brought a sign first, to wrestling? I remember one that says Roddy Piper has AIDS was a sign that was brought once.
Jesus.
And that person was banned from WWF shows because of the severity of the sign. But it was shown on the wrestling show because that sort of thing was apparently allowed back then. And it was good for heat, but that person was banned. That was the famous story. So then people were just thinking, we better not bring signs in case we get banned. Well, someone should tell the February 2nd or February 13th, 1989 crowd that signs are banned because, my God, there's 43,000 signs in this show. It's ridiculous. So I took note of some of the funny ones that I could see. You've got the casual ones that are like Shane 316 and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. One guy had written a sign that says, "How was the dog show?" Just asking for feedback. We had China is my dad, which I thought was a bit inaccurate. And then my favourite one of the whole show was Chocolate Sexual, who had just got Mark Henry's nickname wrong.
I love it when you see a misspelled wrestling sign like Bork Lesnar.
But I just thought there's some hilarious wrestling signs. And in 2012, I want to say, 12 or 13, I started a Twitter page called @FunnyWWESigns. And I had this theory in my head that I was going to get really big on Twitter through this Twitter account, and I was going to tweet all these funny signs. And through that, after getting thousands of followers because of the wrestling signs, I would share the YouTube channel. That was my philosophy back in 2012. And I'd done it for a couple of months, and I would like tweet pictures of like the signs I see on TV, or I'll just type them out or whatever like that. I'll show a clip or whatever, retweet stuff. And then someone fucking reported my account and got it suspended. I reported, I don't know if it was WWE, for copyright or whatever, so I reported that and said it was a false report and it was a false claim. This is all my own stuff. I'm taking the pictures myself and stuff like that. And Twitter were like, "Nope, you're done," and deleted the account. Now, on Twitter, if you search @FunnyWWESigns or whatever it is, there's some other guy doing it now who's got thousands of things. Hang on.
Well, I've just searched it and it's been suspended.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's the Twitter picture?
@FunnyWWESigns, right? All one word. You go to... Hold on. I've lost it. Account suspended. Twitter suspends accounts that violate the Twitter rules.
Okay, well, I've just signed it. It's another one here. It's just @WrestlingSigns, which is the person who joined in July 2019, who has stolen my idea. 16.5 thousand followers.
What?
And if you look at their header on their Twitter page, which is at Wrestling Signs. I believe this is the Raw I was talking about. My favourite one is Norway hates Cena. Like, the whole of Norway hates John Cena.
That was a bit harsh of the entire nation of Norway. They're in the Attitude Era, right? This, I can't be the only one who noticed this. This used to happen a lot. Please tell me you've seen this. In 2000 and 2001 on Raw, SmackDown, and pay-per-view, every now and then you would see the same guy with a sign that just said pork.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
pork sign, and I used to enjoy that. But to your point, like, these shows were always awash with signs, and you'd feel bad for the people, like, whose view would be obstructed by these signs.
Yeah.
You just don't get that now, and I think there must be a rule in place. And I don't know what the rules are nowadays. I do know that when we went to Raw at the Hydro in 2016, I had to get my picture taken with a guy who brought a big sign that said Roman sells Avon.
Classic.
Right? But I remember when Robert and I were going to Rebellion in 2001, being told by Robert's mum, like, I was 10 at the time, you have to make a sign. And Robert and his brother brought a bunch of signs, and I think I've told the story how he'd made a Kurt Angle sign, but we didn't know that he'd joined the Alliance, so he was gutted. He made a Hardy Boys sign, and I made an Undertaker sign, which was bloody useless because he wasn't at the show.
Yes, right.
But my mum helped me do it, and it was this massive bit of sign, that cardboardy kind of material, and I'd taken a centerfold poster from WWF magazine of Undertaker, and that went in the center of it, and then my mum helped me do this really beautiful kind of calligraphy almost to say Undertaker at the top and then Dead Man Walking at the bottom. And cool. I used to at the show, I just kept holding it up randomly for no reason, because, you'd see fans doing that at the show, but I realized now that's because they were facing the hard cam and they were trying to get their sign on telly. So I would just lift it up randomly. I was never on camera because I was on the side of the hard camera. And I had that sign for years. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I kept it for a long time after the show.
My mate took a sign to the 2014 Hydro show, which was just a big E. I thought that was genius. I've got a picture here on the wrestling at Wrestling Signs Twitter page, and it's a picture from Nitro, someone behind the commentators, and the sign just says, "I wish I was at Raw." That's great.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I love it. I love Wrestling Signs. I love the creativity. I hate the fact people the staff will go and take them away. Surely it should be encouraged to make the show look cool, not a discipline. But yeah, whatever, man. I understand if it's something really inappropriate, but I mean, it's just a bright sign. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be taken away. I don't agree with that at all. I took signs before. I took ones. I actually took a whiteboard once with
Really?
with a whiteboard pen and a removable, obviously, eraser, and I would just write.
Amazing.
I'd write something for whoever was coming out. You know what I mean? But then I realised, obviously, they won't be able to see it.
Well, the wee ones we have in classrooms.
Yeah, one from classrooms. Yeah, and they wouldn't be able to read what's on it because it's just a black marker.
Yeah.
But I thought it was genius at the time. I don't know. So, yeah.
It's a good shout, man.
There you go. Wrestling Signs. That's what I'm thankful for this week. But also, last week we talked about a new segment that we're going to be doing, and that is showing the Jingle Lady, who is known as Glenn's wife, Kate, some wrestling. And why don't you tell the lovely listeners what you did this week?
So, yeah, a few weeks ago, you might remember, dear listener, that my wonderful wife and her pal crashed the podcast. And it was when Kate started talking about the fact that she'd kind of walked in on me watching Hell in a Cell match between Edge and Taker at SummerSlam 2008. And she couldn't quite remember the details, not being a wrestling fan. And she talked about the dead guy and the blonde guy. And I thought, there's maybe something in this. And we bounced around the idea of me maybe just showing her some random matches and just getting her assessment of the matches and getting her a sense of what she thought of them. And I thought it would be important to make sure that she had no context at all for these matches. I would just pick WWF or whatever at its most bonkers and give her them. And when I thought about what I would show her, the first match, Chris, that came to mind was WrestleMania 17, Vince versus Shane. Because if that's not WWF at its most bonkers,
Yeah, a family classic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, So, like a few days ago, we sat down and I put on WrestleMania 17 and we watched this match. And so, what you're about to hear is Kate's honest reaction to the match. We hit record just at the closing moments. And you'll hear what she has to say. Now, I did it on my phone, so the quality isn't excellent, dear listener, but it's only for a couple of minutes. And if we keep this going, then we'll maybe use the fancy posh microphone in the future. But for our first attempt, this was raw, uncooked, uncut. This is what my darling wife, Kate, thought of the street fight at WrestleMania 17. So, Kate, we've just watched Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon from WrestleMania 17.
Yep.
We watched that without you having any context as to what was going on. I didn't even tell you who was in the match.
Yep.
As we watch referee Mick Foley, or as you called him, referee Bob Hoskins, raising Shane's arm as he embraces his mother, what were your thoughts on this match?
Well, I'm not going to lie. Quite an interesting family story going on there, if I can pick up the pieces correctly. There was a mistress. Mm-hmm. There was a mum. There was a dad and a brother and sister. The sister was daddy's girl. Mm-hmm. The boy was mama's boy. And raging. And Bob was obviously involved as well. Like, he was meant to be there mediating. But let's be honest, he is not a fan of Mr. McMahon.
Definitely
He's not a fan of Mr. McMahon. Nope. So there was lots of bins involved. There was lots of chairs involved, all different kinds of chairs, different kinds of desks as well, all the ones that just like fold in half really easily. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, considering what Mr. McMahon's obviously been up to with the mistress, Lynn is getting involved.
Yeah, we should just stress that our dog has now jumped up on Kate. Maybe she doesn't want Kate to watch any more WrestleMania 17.
No more WrestleMania for you. So I can only assume that she now knows about the mistress, but she doesn't really give a monkey's, let's be honest.
Well,
like,
she does kick him in the groin.
Yeah, but she's pretty placid when she does it. She's probably a sociopath or a psychopath.
Well, she does work for Donald Trump now.
Well, but all of the above then.
Yeah.
And so, no empathy was given to the nut cracking that happened.
My final question then, in wrestling we often do match star ratings, where we give matches usually a rating out of 5. Okay. So out of 5 stars, how would you rate this classic street fight from WrestleMania 17?
Well, it's difficult to rate considering I've not really watched many matches.
So for you as a lover of storytelling,
I mean, do we do we rate the acting? Or do we...
Okay, let's go 3 categories. Right. Out of 5 stars, how do you rate the action?
I would say a 3.5.
Okay. Out of 5 stars, how would you rate the development of the narrative?
Well, I would say, I mean, I think I got the gist. So I think, probably a 4.
And finally, out of 5 stars, how would you rate the actual performances, the acting itself?
Well, the moves were decent. Not really. Well,
Shane's all right.
Well, I mean, I could see he wasn't really punching, and I could see at it was hard to believe that any of the actions were happening. So that probably means that, I'm going to rate it at a 2.
My final question is, can we get one of those bins for the new house?
Definitely not. They're far too flimsy.
Oh, we'll be back next time for the next match that we get Kate to watch. So, there you have it. The highlight for me in that, Chris, was there were lots of bins involved.
That's my favourite line. There was lots of bins involved. That's like something you would just say when you go to the dump or something. Like, there's lots of bins involved.
It's just the way that, if you're looking at that without context the first time, that is the thing that's most glaring about the match. I remember the bit you didn't hear, as we were watching it when Linda was brought down. Kate said, "Oh, I bet she's going to stand up at some point and do something." I was like, "Don't be stupid, Kate."
Yeah. Listen. You want to talk about the pop of that moment?
Oh, best pop in the world. I actually don't think Kate clocked that because we were talking at that point when it happened, but it is one of the best pops in the history of wrestling. But the funny thing is, as well, as we were watching that, she kept saying that Mick Foley looked like the guy that did the paintings, and she meant Bob Ross. Who used to do the painting show, but my brain kind of defaulted, and I said, "What do you mean, Bob Hoskins, who I believe is the guy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit?" So
Mick Foley doesn't look like either of those two men.
I know. Mick Foley, friend of the show, by the way, who has introduced this show, was wrongfully compared to both of those men. So Mick, I'm sorry if you're listening, but I just I thought that was a good show to show her. So, dear listener, if you enjoyed that, we will certainly get her back on to react to other matches. And indeed, if you have any suggestions for matches that Kate should watch, do let us know. I have a few up my sleeve in my mind that I might show her, but I'm definitely open to suggestions.
Mick Foley just comes in and goes, "Here's just a couple of happy little trees here in the corner, and then you got to take your brush and you got to take the color and the paint, and then you just beat the devil out of it. There you go.
We'll just paint a little barbed wire cage over there. That'll be our little secret.
A little lonely Mr. Socko over here." Right. So it's time for me to wrestle, but is it time for our last toilet break of the evening?
You've brought it to the table, so let's do it.
Toilet break.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, it's time for me to wrestle, ladies and gents. And listen, we go through these stories all the time, and this is a story of me meeting a British wrestler by the name of Lionheart. And I understand that that's not the most overwhelming name to hear that we're going to talk about for the next little while, because people want to hear our stories about meeting like Roddy Piper and Mick Foley and Jeff Hardy and John Cena and all these big names. But sometimes they're the bog standards, autograph signings or funny stories or whatever. Sometimes, you have these funnier stories and you have these more obscure stories with the lesser known names. So although Lionheart isn't this big name in wrestling, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, dear listener, but I hope you enjoy the story. I hope you take it with a pinch of salt, the fact that we feel like the story is good enough to tell on an episode. This one's quite a special one. So after the jingle, we will get into the story.
Meet a wrestler, we met a wrestler in the flesh.
Oh, yeah.
So this one is from myself, dear listener, and I hope that I hope you enjoy this one, because this is one of my really kind of obscure and funny ones. That there's so many layers to it that I'll do it as quickly as I can, right? Because I know like the Young Bucks story was about 6 hours long. It's actually still going on. But again, that's one of the better stories, So I want to kind of take my time.
I think you should, because it's quite special, isn't it? And that is your story to tell. But I've heard this story once before, and the fact that even though I know this story, that I'm really looking forward to hearing it again. That just tells me you should take your time with it. And I think the true wrestling fans who listen to this will really smile when they hear this.
Well, we should preface this. Is that a word? Preface this? Mm-hmm. Is that a word? English teacher?
We should preface this with
the knowledge that we lost Lionheart last year. Last June, which is ridiculous. Or last July, it was ridiculous. And we had a tribute show which we talked about before on one of our previous episodes, which I believe is the Live Event Experiences Part 2 episode, which might, at the top of my head, might be episode 7. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
And we talked about that and how much of a special show that was. And so we should make that clear that we no longer have Lionheart in our lives and we miss him dearly, and this kind of makes the story a bit more special. So that's probably why we're wanting to take our time with it. But anyway, so Lionheart was my favourite British wrestler. Right, he was like the top UK star that never made it to WWE or whatever. Right, and you may have heard of him through TNA or whatever he's been used from before, even just ICW, because I know that got some international buzz. In 2013 or whatever it was, but it really took off. And Lionheart was always like that name in the UK scene that you would go in, you could always rely on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was a big star to me anyway, in terms of my household. Like, we talked about it all the time, and anytime I saw him on a show, I'd go out of my way to see him. And there was a time from 2011 to 2013-14 where I would literally travel round Scotland to see him wrestle. Like, he was always the main man, whether it be in a tag team with Wolfgang or in the main event. all over the country. Me and my dad would take either like a pal or two, or it might just be the two of us. We would go to Kilmarnock and Mabel and Largs and Irvine and Greenock and all these places around the country to see these independent shows, mainly because he was on top, you know. So that's what we're talking about here. He's one of my favourite wrestlers, you know, of that era. And in 2011, there was this thing that happened at the SWA training school, which I had been to previously, and I guess we'll talk about that again. I mentioned it last week, but we'll talk about it down the line. And they were promoting the upcoming TNA Maximum Impact Tour show that was going to be in Glasgow that year. And Jeff Jarrett was doing like a seminar. The founder of TNA was doing like a TNA tryout seminar thing at the SWA school. And then all of a sudden, Jeff Jarrett hits Lionheart over the head with a guitar. Like, out of nowhere. Like, it's not as if it was like Jeff Jarrett's going to come over and we're going to have this angle. It just happened. And I remember the people at the school being like, and the students being like, what on earth? And we saw this on social media. Do you remember this? Did you see this at the time, 2011 sort of time?
No, I didn't even know that he'd ever had that kind of interaction with Jarrett. That's news to me.
So yeah, it was this big thing. And then it was like to build to a match at the TNA show in 2011. So they built this thing and it was just Lionheart versus Jeff Jarrett. And to me, I was like, that was huge for me because I was such a big Lionheart fan. And I was thinking, this means Lionheart's in TNA now. They did the same thing with Johnny Moss down south. And they ended up having a match at the London show. But this is at the Braehead Arena in front of, 7,000 people, whatever it was, capacity, or 5,000 people at Braehead. And it was Lionheart and Jeff Jarrett. And of course, it's a TNA house show. So there's no cameras involved. So I filmed the entire match. I sat there in my seat and I filmed the whole thing, right?
Wow.
With the intention of showing it to Lionheart and go, oh, look, I filmed your match against Jeff Jarrett in case you want it. So I'm like wee guy Chris, right? And Lionheart comes out to his actual theme song, by the way. They played the song he used on all the shows. So I took this thing, I took the whole video and stuff, and the finish is Jeff Jarrett hits him with the guitar again, and Greg Hemphill from Still Game was the referee of this match. And like I remember I filmed the whole thing. And I got home and I uploaded it to the computer. I put it on YouTube and I sent Lionheart the link to the YouTube video. It was like, oh, I filmed your match, by the way. I sent it to him on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And like it pure meant a lot to him. Like he was pure like, oh my God, like this is the only way I'm going to get a chance to watch this.
Yeah.
And from that day, I just felt like connected to him. I just felt as if he was like he knew who I was. He would talk to me at shows, whether it be like BCW and PBW. They'd always go and speak to me. They'd always say hello and stuff. He was always so nice. And then a few years later, I had all these, this neck injury and all that stuff, and all these things happened to him. And he was going to wrestle Rob Van Dam at the Hydro. So I technically had met him a bunch of times before this.
Yeah.
So like I'd met him, I don't know, 10 or 12 times just in passing, when he knew who I was, he knew my name and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was changed to a triple threat match with Zach Gibson, one member of the Grizzled Young Veterans. That was me supposed to love a piddly, and I'll probably cut that. So that was going to be a triple threat match now with RVD, Lionheart, Zach Gibson. What a random match, right? But it's because Lionheart and Zach Gibson were kind of feuding, and Gibson had nothing to do on the show, so they just added him to the match. And it was actually quite cool. Like, it ended up being a good match anyway, the triple threat and stuff. So this match was happening and stuff, and I didn't have tickets yet because I was in my third year of drama school, and I was on a real big budget at the time, and I was like, I want to really get tickets and go see this show, but I'm just watching my money and stuff like that. I knew I would go, but I just wanted to like hold out just in case,
Yeah.
And then I see on Twitter that Lionheart, one of my favourite wrestlers who knows me, who I'd go see wrestle all over the country, was holding a competition to win free tickets to the Hydro. And I was like, there's a great opportunity, because at least he would know my name. If my Twitter thing would come up or whatever. So I thought, I'm going to enter the competition, right? And the competition was basically, it was very, very simple. It was like, all you had to do was get a picture from ICW's Facebook page and create like a meme, like a funny meme from this Facebook page, and send it to Lionheart. So I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember what I sent him. It was something to do with like Chris Toll, and it was like, I made a joke about him being really tall, or so. I don't even remember what the meme was. It wasn't even funny, right? But it was just something stupid that I just thought would be funny. I sent it to Lionheart, and I made it through to the second round. I just thought there was one round, but I made it through to the second round of the competition.
Yeah. And
at this point, I because it wasn't even funny, I was thinking, maybe he just saw my name and recognised my name and, wanted to put me through, So we're now in the second round, and the second round was a promo challenge, right? Wow. And I'm like, what on earth is this? So there was like, in the second round, there was like 8 contestants, right? me and 7 others. And these 8 people who were in this competition had to film a promo, basically saying if the match at the Hydro was now changed to a fatal 4-way, how would you promote the match? How would you build up the match? What would you say in the promo if you were added to this match? You know? Yeah. Say it was me versus Lionheart versus RVD versus Zach Gibson. So at first I was like, oh no, like I don't want to do this. It's going to be really cringy. And of course I did like backyard wrestling and stuff. I was like, I know I can like kind of get through a promo, but it's going to be awful. You know what I mean? It's just going to be, they're going to laugh at me, right? And then my mate Jack, who wanted to come to the show with me, was like, but you're an actor. Like, just like, we're here in drama. I got the notification in drama school. I was sitting between classes and I was like, oh God. And he's like, let's just go do it now. Like, we've got free time. All the drama rooms are free. Let's just go in and do it. Yeah. I'll just do it off the cuff and stuff. And I was trying to think of things to say and stuff. So we went into one of the drama classrooms and I stood in front of the black curtain. And I'm just like wearing like what I was ever wearing to drama school. I had like a grey t-shirt and like a black jumper, a black zipper. Okay. And my mate Jack is holding my phone and I just like start talking. And I just did this promo. And it was all right. It was quite funny. I don't know if I still have it. If I still have it, I guess I could play it.
That'd be amazing.
Well, I'll play it. If I can find it, I'll play it, right? If I found it, it'll play now. November 19th, at the SSC Hydro in Glasgow, it's ICW Fear and Loathing 10. I'm going to have to go up against 3 of ICW's biggest stars. There's Lionheart, there's Rob Van Dam, and Zach, what's his name again?
Gibson.
Zach Gibson. How can I forget? Liverpool's number 1. The number 1 reason why people are losing interest in this match. And then, of course, then there's the legend. Then there's Rob Van Dam, the whole damn show. Well, Rob, this ain't ECW. This isn't Raw in 2003. No, this is ICW in 2017. And it's survival of the fittest. And Rob, on this roster, I don't know if you're the fittest, dude. Actually, the oldest, maybe. And then, of course, then there's Lionheart. Lionheart, someone who I've travelled the UK to watch wrestle live. I was there when he wrestled Jeff Jarrett and lost. I was there when he wrestled the phenomenal AJ Styles and lost again. I was there last year when he made multiple men look really good, but lost. Lionheart, get ready to make me look like the best wrestler on this feckin' planet, because this Sunday at ICW Fear and Loathing 10, Lionheart loses again. So that was my promo that I sent to Lionheart, right? And it's only like 90 seconds or something like that. It was like a 90-second or 2-minute cut-off or whatever it was. Like, that was like the curfew you had to be finished by. I thought it was okay, and I thought I'd have any chance, as good a chance as anybody to get through,
Yeah.
So it turns out that only like half of the contestants did it because they thought it was heavy embarrassing. What already, right?
Right, okay.
So maybe they sent like 4 promos, and it was me and like I think it was 2 other guys and 1 girl. They sent these promos in. You could watch them. You could just post them on Twitter. It's out there on Twitter if you want to search it, Mm-hmm. And I sent this to Lionheart, and then it was announced that the winners, there was 2 winners of this competition. Yeah. One was a girl called Louise, and the other one was at CM42 TV. That's me. So I won this challenge, right? This promo challenge, which apparently was funny, right? Okay. So now I get through to the final round. I just thought, I didn't know there was rounds. It's like the Brawl for All. Just got me through to the final round. And the final round, I was put into a chat on Twitter with me, this girl Louise, and Lionheart. So we're in this chat now, and Lionheart's organising the whole thing. I'm going to get up on my phone right now. So here we are in the chat room. I've still got the messages and stuff, which is bonkers to think about now that Lionheart's no longer with us, that I've still got these messages that you sent me,
Yeah.
It's just cool. So Lionheart, this is on the 16th of November 2017 at 1:37 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
He goes, "Hi both. Are you available to be in Glasgow tomorrow afternoon?" And I was like, well, I live in Glasgow. I was like, yeah. I said, oh dear, what is happening? Was my response. And he then explained the rules of the competition.
Right.
And the competition was, come and find Lionheart somewhere in town. If you find him wherever he is having his lunch, he has the tickets in his pocket. If you find him, you win the tickets for the free tickets to the Hydro show, which includes RVD versus Lionheart versus Zach Gibson. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what on earth? Like, it just so happens that I was off the next day, so it was fine. But I was like, I'm going to go. I got so nervous. I'm going to have to go find him. Like, where are they going to be? So he's like having a laugh in this chat room. He's saying, "Oh, it depends how long it takes you to find me." Ha 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 ha. He goes, "You'll be against each other, and you'll get clues on the ICW Twitter. Find me, win the tickets. Like, it's so like Lionheart. I could just hear him saying it. And I said, start time. And he went between 2 and 4. And I actually said, okay, cool. Is it 2 tickets we're playing for? If both of us can't find you, can we just get one each? And he replied, no comment. And he said, he went, remember that the clues are on the ICW Twitter page. And then he said, good luck. And that was it. So that was it. It was like game on. It was me versus this girl, Louise. And we had to run about Glasgow City Centre following clues that were posted on ICW's Twitter, trying to find one of my favourite wrestlers sitting having his lunch, right?
Yeah.
It's just bonkers. So I'm walking about Glasgow and I'm just walking in all these shops and I'm thinking, could he be in here? And there was like clues. And I just had no idea what he was meaning by these clues. Like the clues were so vague.
Really?
It was ridiculous. Like
what
it was
kind
like,
of
it was,
thing?
I don't know. It was like, if you like chicken, you'd find me here. Or you'll find me here either for a breakfast meal, a dessert, or a main course, and things like that. And it was like,
Right,
what?
so literally every restaurant in Glasgow.
Literally, it was so vague. There was no like tagline or catchphrase or anything. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh my god. So I'm walking about, and I actually started in Buchanan Galleries. I stood in Buchanan Galleries for a good 20 minutes, waiting for the first clue. I thought that's a safe starting point, you know?
Yeah.
Quite central. So eventually I discovered that it's Juicy Lucy's, which was a place down at kind of Tron Gate in Glasgow.
Okay.
That's where they were. So it kind of clicked to me what it was, and it was someone like the final clue was like the chicken is so juicy or something. And it's just, and I saw like the kind of logo, they posted a picture and I kind of saw the logo and I kind of knew what it was. So I sprinted down to Juicy Lucy's, which was quite far away from where I was. And it was like a moment in a film.
Mm-hmm.
Like I made it all the way down and I had to stop at the lights before, so I didn't get run over by a car. And I'm standing there on the pavement, I'm looking across the road and there's Juicy Lucy's, there's the restaurant. And I know he's in there. And I'm just like sitting, and I'm standing at the lights and I'm looking across the road and I was like, what is happening right now? Like, I'm about to go into this restaurant. I've never been in this restaurant before. It's not as if I know the layout of the restaurant, you know? I'm supposed to go up to one of my favourite wrestlers and go, hi, remember me? I'm here for the free tickets, you know? Yeah. I just didn't know how it was going to go. I was just a bit kind of like, what on earth is happening here? I got really nervous and really like anxious about doing it. And I was like, should I just leave it? Should I just walk back? I was like, well, I've come so far. I did that fucking promo. Like, I need to, I need to do it. So eventually the green man goes in the lights and I was like, here we go. So I walk across the road and I walk right up to the window and I look in the window and they're sitting right there in the window is Lionheart and referee Thomas Cairns are sitting having like whatever they're having for their lunch, right? And I was like, they've not seen me yet. And I'm just looking at them. And I was like, it's going to be really creepy if like they turn around and I'm just staring at them. And I was like, I wonder if they recognise me from the pro, like, will they know it's me? You know what I mean? Like, obviously they would have done if they watched the promo, and of course Lionheart knows me from before, but like, I was just thinking, like, are they going to recognise me? And then I looked, and then I saw the Louise girl was sitting next to them. So she won the competition. She found them first. So I've lost the competition. And I was like, I don't actually need to go in now. Like, I've lost. I've not won the tickets. Like, I could just leave, and I don't need to have this awkward encounter. And as I was kind of, deliberating whether I should leave it or not, Lionheart just kind of like, I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I can see it in my head right now. Like, it had that kind of like a bald head. It's just kind of like, it's just like turned very slowly and saw me, and then like and then turned back to Thomas Cairns. Kind of did that sort of like, check this out, like with his head, like, look, here he's there, and the two of them just smiled and like were like, come in. And I was like, oh my god, they saw me. Oh my god, they saw me. It's so embarrassing.
Just standing staring.
Like, I'm all nervous. I'm like, I've lost the competition. Like, I'm a loser now. I'm going to, but they'll tell me to come in. I was like, oh god. And it was like November as well, so it was freezing, right? So it's like my hands are all cold and stuff. So I walk in and the two of them stand up and Thomas Cairns gives me this big handshake and he was wearing gloves. And it was this like big sort of like, feel like embrace handshake. And then Lionheart's just looking at me with like this grin on his face. Like, the way like, I can't really describe it, but like, the way like, as if like you'd be seeing someone you've not seen in ages. Well, not pals. I'm not saying that me and Lionheart were friends by any means. But he knew me from years ago. Like, this is now a good 5 or 6 years after I filmed this match against Jeff Jarrett. And he's kind of looking at me going, well. Like, look where we are now. You know what I mean? And he gives me this big handshake and stuff and like brings me in for a hug. And he's like, you lost second place. He's like, you've only fast enough. As if he was kind of disappointed that I didn't win. Like, I'd let him down. And I was like, I know, I just couldn't figure out the clues. And I said, thanks very much for the competition. It was so much fun. And the two of them sit back down, and Louise is there. I was like, hi, Louise, well done, congratulations. And Lionheart was like, well, you're lucky because Louise is a really good human. And Louise has actually won the 2 tickets, but she's going to give you one anyway. And it was just such a nice moment. The 4 of us are sitting there, me, Louise, Thomas Cairns, and Lionheart. And it was just like the 4 of us are sitting in Juicy Lucy's.
Brilliant.
And Louise gave me one of the tickets, and I was like, oh my God. Like, in fact, she didn't give me it there. I had to actually get it on the day of the show because she had to collect them at the box office, actually. But it was like a slip she had to collect or whatever. So I thought that was cool. She was sitting with a milkshake, and I was thinking, do I get a milkshake? Like, what should I do? Should I order food? Like, what? Are they inviting me to lunch? You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't know because they were nearly finished their lunch. Yeah. I didn't want them to leave, and then I was stuck with like Louise. Like, I didn't want. That sounds bad. I didn't want to be stuck with Louise, but I didn't know her. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if we're like long-term friends. It just would have been about awkward. So we're sitting there on Juicy Lucy's. It was cool. And I actually didn't sit down because it makes me nervous when I sit down. I'm much of a stander. And I'm standing up just there, and Lionheart was like, your promo, by the way, was hilarious. He was like, it was just zero chill. Like, that was his exact words, zero chill, just didn't care. Like I said in the promo, something like, Zach Gibson, you're making people lose interest in this match, and RVD was relevant in 2003 and all that stuff, you know what I mean? And like, I was just, I don't know, being a bit brash.
Brilliant.
And he was like, I liked it so much, I actually played it in the ICW Asylum thing at the training centre, and I put it on the big screen. All the trainees were watching it, and I showed Dallas it, and Dallas was howling, and Jester was howling, and you popped the boys, by the way, you popped the boys, well done. And this is Lionheart telling me this big guy that I've admired for years, telling me that he's went and showed my promo to like his co-workers and his boss.
Yeah,
like it was nuts, and I was like, you never showed them that. He was like, I did. I was just laughing, and it was different. It was like a different sort of starstruck. You know what I mean? Like now when I met Piper, like Piper's just joking and laughing and making comments to my dad about being old and all that stuff, and I was just sitting going, oh my God, that's Roddy Piper in front of me. Yeah. And then like the Young Bucks, I felt a bit more personal because they were being more personal. Yeah. Whereas this was like a different sort of like, I felt as if I was with my pal, you know. Yeah. And Thomas Cairns had done some like acting work with a bunch of my friends, Dion and Ewan, who were like who knew him through the BBC and stuff like that. So I kind of mentioned that to him. I was like, I know these guys and stuff. And I was actually with Dion today, which is funny. And yeah, it was such a lovely experience with this competition that led to this random restaurant. And like, I didn't even win the competition, but I still got the ticket. You know what I mean? It was just what a cool experience, and I couldn't have thanked Lionheart enough for it, you know. And I've always felt really connected to him. So that's what I don't. In terms of like celebrity deaths and stuff like that, right? Obviously, it kind of, I don't want to say it gets me upset. It definitely gets me down. But I'm not that bad when it comes to really getting emotional about these things, because I just understand, like, obviously some are worse than others, but it's just the way of life, you know what I mean? It's just these things happen. Yeah. But Lionheart's one really hit me. Like, it really impacted me. And it was the first time ever, really. You know, obviously Eddie Guerrero, but I was really young, you know what I mean? Yeah. This is the first time in like that a celebrity, or I guess quote unquote celebrity, passed away that I was like, what? That like, and I had to like sit down. You know what I mean? I got really emotional. Yeah. I don't know what it was. Well, that's why it was, because I kind of knew him like that. But like, I'm usually quite good with that. Yeah,
you know, exactly. Most of us are just fans, but you were a fan who had all these little stories, all these encounters with him from a very, very young age. I remember that first picture because you shared it when he passed away, of you and him at SWA, and you're tiny. You're just a tiny wee baby boy, you know.
Wearing my TNA t-shirt, which I bought at the Impact Zone in 2008 or whatever it was, you know. Yeah. So
I mean, it's just that more special for you, I think.
Yeah. The other day I was watching, so we have a beautiful podcast here, but there's an even funnier wrestling podcast with two Scottish guys, and it's called Wrestling Daft with Grado and Rab Florence, who is the star of Burniston and BBC fame. And they just have this hilarious podcast, and they did so it was the 1 year anniversary of Lionheart's passing, and they did like a Lionheart tribute show, and they posted it on YouTube, so it was like a video version, and they had Jack Jester and Wolfgang, two of his closest friends, on this show, and the four of them are sitting there talking about Lionheart, and my God, it was absolutely hilarious. They're sharing so many funny stories about him, and the four of them are sitting there like, you know, the way when there's, it doesn't need to be someone who's died, but when you're sitting there with like your mates having a drink and you're talking about old times and you're just giddy, you know what I mean? And like you're kind of crying and shouting and doing impressions and things like that. It was like that. I felt as if I was watching four mates talking about their old pal, you know?
Yeah.
I can't recommend it enough, actually. I'll actually send you the link because it was so good. And I was like, and I was in bits laughing. My tummy was so sore and stuff. He was telling like all these funny stories. And I got really emotional. I was like, God, sometimes I forget that the whole thing happened. You know what I mean? It's just a bit surreal, really, you know? Because it's not as if I knew him all the time anyway, you know? But yeah, it's just an interesting story, a funny story, and it's a memory that I'll always have, you know? With Lionheart and with Louise, that girl, and Thomas Cairns, I guess, you know? So anytime I see Thomas Cairns, I smile when I see him as a referee and stuff like that. And yeah, that's it. That's the story. That's the story of meeting Lionheart and Juicy Lucy's after losing the competition.
It's a lovely story. I smile thinking about it, and it means it carries more weight now that he passed so tragically.
Yeah.
But you know, it's you know, as a wrestling fan, it's one of those funny kind of such a bizarre, because most of us when we meet wrestlings, it's at a signing or an inside the ropes kind of deal, and that is just a totally like bizarro kind of story. I loved it. Was lovely to hear it again, you know. And Lionheart was one of those special kind of guys in the UK wrestling scene. I never did have the pleasure of meeting him. Saw him wrestle a bunch. I think the closest I ever got to meeting him was I told that story a couple of weeks ago, being at the Billy Gunn show and sitting in
yeah.
The entire roster came in, and Robert and I got chatting to a friend, a colleague of mine at the time, who's quite well connected with the ICW guys, or was at the time. And Lionheart came over to talk to her for a few minutes. So there was just like a very brief kind of nod, like a hello, but I was too nervous to really say anything. But you got the sense there that he for the fans that he had that rapport with, that he had a lot of time for them, and so it's no surprise to hear that from you, like from your encounters with him.
Yeah, you know, I remembered another thing. It just made me smile, right? So I don't know how long after this was. This might have been 6 months after the Hydro show. So like 6 months after November 2017. So mid 2018. I was in Silverburn with me, my mum, my dad, and my sister, and we were having Nando's. This is obscure to people who don't live in Glasgow. So in Silverburn, the Nando's is like kind of like open to it's like Silverburn's a big shopping centre, like a mall, man. And they have like Nando's is like this open kind of restaurant where you kind of sit in the kind of main hall, but it's cornered off for Nando's. So it's like it's not like an inside restaurant, it's like an open air restaurant, but you're still inside the shopping centre. So we're sitting there, I'm having my chicken or whatever, and I swear to God, we're sitting there, and I was facing like the other way, not the entrance. I was kind of facing into the restaurant, and in walks Lionheart on his own, and he sits on the table just across from us, and he's on his own, and he orders whatever he orders and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting eating, and I didn't really realise it straight away. But then after a while, his food arrived and stuff. I guess I saw the waiter walk past me with the food, so I kind of he caught my eye, you know. And he puts his food down in front of Lionheart, and he starts eating. And I was like, "Oh my God, there's Lionheart just eating Nando's?" And he was eating his food, but he was like rehearsing a promo that he was going to do.
Wow.
Like he was kind of like lip syncing what he was going to say, like going over it in his head, just sitting to himself. And I remember looking at him, I was going, "What's he saying?" And I was trying. It was another weird situation. I'm just sitting looking at him. I'm just sitting there eating his dinner. I'm just looking at him, and I was like, I'm trying to work out what he was saying. And then he put his head up, and he saw me. He totally clocked me, and we had this like wee moment where he was like, he kind of went like, obviously he can't see me, but he kind of nodded his head like, as if like we're both in Nando's. Oh yeah, like it was kind of like a cool wee nod, you know. That was the last time. That's the last time. That was the last time that I saw him in a sort of an informal setting, you know. It just came back to me there. That's so funny.
Wow.
Oh God. Right, there we go.
Yeah. Right. Shall we call it a night, Chris?
Yeah. Apologies for keeping you so long. Apologies. I do ramble. But yes, this has been a pleasure. Thinking back to that story, and also just the silliness of this episode. Anything you want to say to the listeners before we go?
No, be kind to everyone, each other, folks, and I look forward to next week on the Wrestling Connection, where we are. Well, it's it's Wrestling Connection 23, so we'll be in Detroit, I guess. You know,
and we will be all grown up.
Oh, well, that was it. I forgot what the tagline was. We're going to be all grown up. We'll need to
Now,
hire
I'm
like
all
child
grown up.
actors to be like a child Chris and a child Glenn. You know.
No, we're not going to do that. Unless you can find any home video footage of when you were younger, we can play it. That is a genius idea.
Okay,
if you've got any footage of you like with a wrestling belt or something when you were younger, I can put it on Instagram.
Oh dear. Right. Good night, everyone. Take care. Thank you for listening. And you can have the final word, Chris.
I was going to let you do it. Okay. Well, you can follow us on Twitter, which is @WrestleConnect1, and on Instagram @WrestleConnection. And please subscribe to us on YouTube for exclusive video content. And remember, whatever you're listening to the podcast on, please leave us a review, share